I'm very happy, very honored to be here today to chair this session. I work as the director of the United Nations Office of the Women's Federation for World Peace International, as well as the president of the Women's Federation in Europe. You might notice our logo, the one on the far right. We are a co-sponsor of this, of one of three co-sponsors of this event, and I'm very. It's a wonderful place to be and to speak. I'm used to being at the United Nations. Everything is sort of, equal. We're all at the same level. We're all, but it's kind of nice being above. So I just wanted, maybe since Uri took a moment to say something about the Universal Peace Federation, I also wanted to just say a few things about the Women's Federation for World Peace, and start by introducing for 15 years, our international president of the Women's Federation for World Peace happens to be sitting in this room. Her name is Dr. Lan Yang Moon. Please. She is now actually relocated to this part of Europe, at least for a while. So if anyone has anything they would like her to do or to come to their country, or you can talk to her. She's really a special emissary still, always, for Women's Federation for World Peace. The title of our session is the role of NGOs in strengthening the family. So I have been for almost 22 years working in Geneva, representing civil society at the United Nations, various different non-governmental organizations, but for the last 18 years representing the Women's Federation. And I think this logo that you see here of Women's Federation is a very good kind of a pictorial view or vision of what Women's Federation is all about. We are located in almost every country in the world. We started 22 years ago, basically a very bottom-up kind of organization where women went out to work with women locally, actually started out from Japan, to go out to all corners of the world and really support local women to become more involved and to become more empowered. And based upon the many hundreds, if not more, projects, we started to locate ourselves in the United Nations offices and also working in advocacy towards governments all around the world based upon the successes of these projects, of really what can happen when women and girls are truly empowered and can begin really to contribute to the societies. So, and this is very much connected with, of course, our theme today, because the family. It is really that experience in the family that is the foundation for the kind of empowerment that women and girls can have in the society. That same kind of tenacity, that same kind of problem solving, resolve, forward-looking, long-term, really hands-on kind of solutions that we see and we discover as women become more and more empowered in our society. And as we saw many examples this morning among our speakers. So I would like now to introduce our first speaker for this session. Again, the role of NGOs in strengthening the family. I asked the speakers to write down what 3 points they would like me to mention about them. And Mr. Kane, you will see already before he speaks, you will have an insight into his character, because he wrote 3 things you didn't know about Richard Kane. 1, he designed and modeled a lecture for the Pope in 1982, which is quite something. He was clocked in March skiing at 106 kilometers per hour, and maybe a little bit more relevant to today, has worked in marriage work for almost 20 years. His own invention, this National Marriage Week, is now located in 26 nations with almost 2 million participants, and has appeared on almost every TV news show in the United Kingdom. So let's give a warm applause and welcome
around. You'd be impressed by it. I'm sure my daughter rode a scheme which was nudging in everything at the time, a 19-year-old would. I was speaking to a chap on coffee, and you hear a guy from here in the Czech Republic. Maybe he didn't enjoy the conversation as much as I did with him, and he decided to stay there and drink coffee. But we were talking about what impact can a group like this, NGO, what kind of impact can groups have? How do we change our societies? Is there a way we can do it? So my job here this morning is to really encourage you. I want to encourage you with my own story, and then I want to move into a little bit of policy and some statistics and things like that. I remember 20 years ago standing in a supermarket with my wife, and I was watching everybody. It wasn't a food supermarket, it was sort of a hardware supermarket, and they were buying wallpaper and lampshades, and they were ever so focused on how to make their homes really nice. And we've all done that and stood there in those queues, haven't we? And I thought, isn't it interesting the way we focus on how to make the home nice, but never consider what do you have to do to make the relationship nice, which is not always, but often the reason why you may well have your own home in the first place. And so I kind of thought, at the same time, a friend of mine had just split up from his wife. And when I asked him, and I said, why are you splitting up? He said, there's no real reason. We just drifted apart. And I'd been at their wedding. It was a big church wedding. They'd made all the vows. Everybody was there. The vicar was great. Whole shooting match. And so I thought, this is terrible. If you think about it, you get these couples, and they walk up the aisle together, and they make their vows in front of everybody, their friends, their neighbours, and everybody. And then they get no support. They're just supposed to make it work on their own. Hands up if you know that making the marriage relationship can be tricky. It's not as straightforward as you imagine. And so I thought, wouldn't it be good to do something really practical that would be sort of an aid memoir to all the couples in the nation to remind them of a very simple message, which is, if you're fortunate enough to be in a marriage, then you should look after it. That was the germ of the idea for Marriage Week. I called the meeting the heads of organisations. They came along and they said, well, this is a great idea, Richard. If you want to do it, then we'll support you. And then fast forward to 3 weeks before the first ever National Marriage Week. And I'm back in a meeting with these heads of organisations again. And they said to me, what's the story? And I said, we've got 500 churches and faith groups to agree to do something pro-marriage to help people within their communities all at the same time in February. And they said, that's an amazing achievement to get churches to do anything at the same time as your wife. Well, I said, well, yes, but we've told all these churches that we're going to do a media campaign to reflect what they're doing. And they said, yes. And I said, and we haven't done anything. It's going to be a secret. It's going to be one of those things which was almost brilliant, but was actually awful. And we've all done things like that as well. And so then I went home and I got a phone call. And the phone call was from a lady who was a personal assistant to a minister in the government. And the minister had heard about this project. And she phoned me up and she said, oh, we would like to support you in your project. And I said, would you? She said, yes. She said, if the minister organises a press launch, and if we use all the press officers of the department to come along, and we put on a lunch afterwards, if we do all these things, and if the minister himself makes a speech at it, would you, Mr. Kane, be free to host it? So I said, I'll just check my diary. But that's exactly what happened. The government came in, they got involved, it became the biggest story of the year. We won awards from the PR industry that year for impact and coverage and exposure. And it was just a massive, massive campaign. Everybody was talking. I remember getting a phone call off a journalist, and she said to me, Mr. Kane, is it that you want to get everybody talking about what do you have to do to have a happy marriage? And she said, well, I need to tell you, this is a great success because all morning in our newsroom, that's all we've been discussing. So that I could ramble on for ages on all these stories. It went on, and then we introduced the project here in the Czech Republic, and in Switzerland, and then in Hungary, and Romania, and the USA, and Germany, and more recently in Austria, and Holland. I was perplexed to see how it would go in Holland, such a liberal country, but it's gone really well. And now we're in 26 countries, and the things just escalated from just one little germ of an idea. And so what I want to say to you this morning is to be encouraged. I want to encourage you because NGOs, innovative people like me and like you, who will have the courage to stand up and say, let's do something, you can become infectious, and that infection can spread remarkably and have real impact. Is that good?
Good.
That's my introduction. So it's interesting to know what has happened in the landscape over the last 20 years, because as my friend explained, I've been doing this kind of activity for 20 years now, and I've seen a number of things change. The first thing that happened is the information has improved. The quality of data relating to couples, families has improved enormously. There wasn't a lot 20 years ago, but there is now. And despite all the changes, things are not as bad as you imagine. The levels, in the UK, the levels of divorce and marriage are fairly static. They're around about 180,000 a year, and that has stayed the same for quite a while. The thing we've identified, because the data has improved, and Heine mentioned it, is that the area where the family is really fragile is in the unmarried family. It's the unmarried family, the cohabiting couple, that has 5 times greater incidence of breakdown than the married family. And even better, couples in my country, if they cohabit, there's no longer any stigma attached to cohabitation. So therefore, if a couple decide to move from cohabitation to marriage, they tend to be making a really quality decision that this is something they want to do. And so the couples that are marrying out of cohabitation in the last 10 years are proving to be more stable and more secure than the previous 10 years, because they're making it more of an intentional thing rather than external constraint and pressure bearing on them, forcing them to marry, when perhaps historically they didn't want to. One of the other things that we've learned, which is really interesting, of course I think everything I'm saying is really interesting, but this thing is particularly interesting, is we've learned that if you make it to 10 years of marriage, the likelihood of you staying together after 10 years is the same as it was in the 1970s. Shall I say that again? If you make it to 10 years of marriage, 11 years and onwards, the likelihood of you staying together is the same as it was in the 70s. So the area we need to focus our attention on in terms of therapy and support is years 1 to 10. Because, folks, if you make it to 10, you're likely to go all the way to the grave anyway, which has to be a good thing. So we need to think, right, if we're going to be strategic, we need to focus our attention on years 1 to 10. I think that's really interesting. Couples are marrying later and later. In the UK now, an average age for a man to marry is 32.1 years of age. And for a woman, is 29.9. Really old, I think, to get married. They should get married a lot younger. And 92% of young people, 16-year-olds, aspire to settle down and get married. 92%. So marriage is still really popular. It's just what we're finding is the route into marriage is changing considerably. And it's not all good. I'm really challenged by the research from Scott Stanley, and again, Heine mentioned it this morning about the sliding versus deciding. Because what that research suggests, it's a study into the attitudes that go on in cohabiting couples. It's quite hard to drill down, so this is valuable research in what his team has discovered is that when a couple choose to move in together, normally the woman is already there. She's thinking, I have a long-term future with this man. I can imagine myself having children with him. I can see the future, and he's in it. But for the man, generally, it's a different story. He's thinking, this is really convenient. I get lots of sex. I get the laundry done. And terribly, he's also thinking, I get to keep my options open. So if somebody else comes along who is better, I can move on. And we've all heard that, haven't we? Couple a big cohabiting. And she's thinking this is it. And then after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, all of a sudden he goes off after a younger person. And that's indicative of that heart attitude, which is really important. And so, for couples that choose to cohabit, the key thing to impress upon them is your intention in this cohabitation that you're moving towards marriage? Or is your intention you just want to live together and be sloppy? Because if it's, I want to live together and be sloppy, that's a recipe for disaster. But if your intention is we're moving towards marriage, that's our goal, we've discussed it, we've agreed, then the likelihood that they're going to do well is improving all the time. Interestingly, a staggering percentage of 96% of 16-year-olds who are living with their biological parents. 96% of them, those parents are married. There's only 4%, 4 out of 100, where the biological parents, by the time the child reaches the age of 16, are still together if they're unmarried. Only 4%. You know, and the media portray that 4% as if it's 94%. Now, out of that percentage, obviously a lot of them, they migrate into marriage, but a lot of them split up. So that's really interesting. And so why is it that marriage is so vital? Why is it? What is it about a piece of paper? People often say to me in interviews, oh, Mr. Kane, it's just a piece of paper. And they wave a piece of paper in the air. And of course they talk about the certificate of marriage, you know. If it's just a piece of, and I say to them, well, if it's just a piece of paper, it's a really powerful piece of paper because it will make you healthier, wealthier, and live longer. But why is it? Why is it? What is it about marriage? What is it about it that makes it work better than anything else? What is it that even if people are cohabiting and they love each other and they're committed to each other, why is it that a married couple are always going to do better than the cohabiting couple? Why is it? Well, it's all to do with all sorts of things. First of all, a sense of external dedication from family and friends into the relationship. Secondly, there's a high level of internal dedication because the man and the woman, they understand what marriage is all about. But thirdly, interestingly, and it's quite hard to get your head around it, but our society understands what a marriage is supposed to be. And in my country, what happens is we do rituals really well. We do the state opening of Parliament where, you know, the Queen gets all dressed up and all the rest of it. And in my country, if you get a degree at Cambridge University, you go along in your gowns and you kneel before the Vice-Chancellor. And in Latin, you beg for your degree. And on it goes, you know. And so if you look at all those things in society, and there are lots of other things as well, you see that there's a commonality there. We wear funny clothes. We say funny words in front of goodness knows who. And this helps us to understand and to solemnize something in a special way. And so, when a couple choose to walk up the aisle together, they wear funny clothes. A long white dress is ridiculous. They wear funny clothes. They make funny vows in front of other people wearing funny clothes. And everybody understands it means something, which it does. Additionally, there's a record of that which is written, it's in writing down, and it's recorded for hundreds of years. In my country, you can go and find out who was married to who hundreds of years ago by going and looking in the parish register. So these are kind of all these external constraints which mean that when the couple make that vow to each other, it's really significant. Added to that, the other side of Stanley's research, which suggests that everybody's always bang on about how the wedding day is really special for the bride. And to be honest with you folks, it's not at all. It's a nonsense. The wedding day is a really special day for the groom, for the man, because it's when he stands there in front of all his friends, his colleagues, his cousins, his relatives, the uncles he doesn't like, the aunties he doesn't get on with. Everybody's there, and he makes his vows in front of everybody. That's the thing that clicks in into the relationship. So you put all those small things together, and you start to see that marriage is hugely significant. And I just want to say a few words before I close about the political approach to marriage support. I was at a meeting just a couple of weeks ago. There was probably about this number of people. The Prime Minister was speaking at it, Mr. Cameron, and he was all about family policy. And he was going on about, he's a great kind of marriage, although he's redefined marriage, and that's all weird and ambiguous, nobody knows what that means, but there you are. It's really hard for politicians, because politicians know this. They know that the most stable family is the married family. They also know that they want to encourage stability in families because it has a great economic impact on the wealth of the nation. But they find it really difficult to say, we think that marriage needs to be supported because in doing so, you're marginalising other family groups who are less wealthy, less power, and have less people and less external support. And it's really difficult for a politician to bring those two together into something which is meaningful and practical. Having said that, what we have to do as NGOs and as policymakers and opinion formers is that we have to make the case as forcibly as we can, as indeed the Marriage Foundation is doing it in the UK, that compels the policymakers to say, even though it may appear as though I'm not giving this weak group in society the attention that they need, I must do things to support this institution in our society which brings great stability and security, not just in the lives of children, but also in the lives of the elderly. So we have to find a way to empower politicians to be able to do the right thing. In the absence of giving a politician an excuse to do the right thing, they'll generally not do the right thing, they'll do the easy thing. So it's down to all of us to say, how can we empower politicians with statistics, with data, with the argument, and compel them to say what they know they ought to say, because then they can stand up and make a speech, and they can blame it all on your research, which makes it easy for them. And so, finally, like Abigail, my idea here is just to encourage you, it's easy to think, we're sitting here, what impact can we have? Well, a mosquito doesn't really have any impact at all until you find one in bed with you all night. And then you find out it's real impact. And there's some of us here, we can be like a mosquito to our governments, to policymakers and people like that. We can be like that mosquito that's in your sleeping bag that you can't get rid of. Which forces them, cajoles them, pressurises them to do the best thing rather than the easy thing. Thank you very much.